Alright, guys, today we are going to be reacting to This Is Why Liberals Never Get Their Facts Correct. Again, this is Thomas Sowell. Let's jump in.
The mere omission of one crucial fact can turn accurate statistics into traps that lead to conclusions that would be demonstrably false if the full facts were known. This often happens in comparisons of different ethnic groups and different income classes, among other comparisons. In trying to determine the reasons for economic and social disparities between blacks and whites, some observers attribute these differences primarily to policies and practices by people outside the black community, while other observers attribute these same differences to internal differences in behavior between black and white Americans. In seeking to resolve this issue, sociologist William Julius Wilson relied heavily on statistics from opinion surveys. These surveys, according to Professor Wilson, show that nearly all ghetto residents, whether employed or not, support the norms of the work ethic. In one survey, fewer than 3% of the black respondents from ghetto poverty census tracts denied the importance of plain hard work for getting ahead in society, and 66% expressed the view that it is very important. After admitting that surveys are not the best way to get at underlying attitudes and values, Professor Wilson nevertheless presents.
Yeah, surveys are it's the light. How can I say this? It's still data, but it's not. How can I say this? Surveys are like just a started, just to get a feel of it when it comes down to data, but it's the least to rely on.
As a refutation of media perceptions of underclass values and attitudes in inner-city ghettos, the fact that residents in inner-city ghetto neighborhoods actually verbally endorse, rather than undermine, the basic American values concerning individual initiative. Despite William Julius Wilson's reliance on opinion surveys to refute claims that ghetto residents have different cultural values from those of the American population as a whole, there is no necessary correlation between what people say and what they do. A survey of low-income people by Columbia University researchers showed that 59% regarded buying goods on credit as a bad idea. Nevertheless, most of the families do use credit when buying major durables. The difference between survey results and demonstrable realities was also pointed out by the author of Hillbilly Elegy.
Oh,
In a recent
you know what's
Gallup
crazy?
poll,
I was about to just say I might read his book. A lot of people are recommending his book. Let me know in the comment section below if it is a good book or not.
Southerners and Midwesterners reported the highest rates of church attendance in the country. Yet actual church attendance is much lower in the South. He also found another survey indicating that working-class whites worked more hours than college-educated whites to be demonstrably false. Those who did the survey called around and asked people what they thought. The only thing that report proves is that many folks talk about working more than they actually work. If someone with no pretensions of being an academic scholar could see the tenuous relationship between survey results and the realities of life, it is hard to understand why surveys were relied on by Professor Wilson for deciding such a crucial issue as the internal or external sources of racial differences in socioeconomic outcomes. Economists tend to rely on revealed preference rather than verbal statements. That is, what people do reveals what their values are better than what they say. Even when people give honest answers, expressing what they sincerely believe, some people's conception of hard work, for example, need not coincide with other people's conception, even when both use the same words. When black students in affluent Shaker Heights spent less time on their schoolwork than their white classmates did, and spent more time watching television, that was their revealed preference. Nor are black and white Americans the only groups with different revealed preferences. In Australia, for example, Chinese students have spent more than twice as much time on their homework as white students did.
Oh man, but why is that? Okay, it can be culture. Okay, let's just give the argument of culture. Culture might be a huge problem here, but is it though? How is it that before the 1960s, Black American was doing a little bit better? Like not now, wow, but better enough. But all of a sudden, we have a culture that black kids are just falling behind, and that's a good question to ask. And all types of conversation need to be held during this type of topic, because there's no way you see this, right? You say, you know what, it's impossible that 30% of the population is committing almost 55% of the crimes and just destabilizing the country basically at this point, because imagine there's only 30%. Imagine there were 20%. I mean, it's insane. I mean, it's insane. We better just really. I don't know how I don't even know how to approach this. I don't even know.
How surprised should we be that Asian students in general tend to do better academically than white students in general in predominantly white societies such as Australia, Britain, or the United States? The same pattern can be seen among whole nations, as such Asian countries as Japan,
Yeah,
Korea, and
true.
Singapore likewise show patterns of hard work by their students and academic results on international tests that place these countries well above most Western nations. Statistics compiled from what people say may be worse than useless if they lead to a belief that those numbers convey a reality that can be relied on for serious decision-making about social policies. Incidentally, the high correlation between the amount of work that different groups put into
Yeah.
their education and the quality of their outcomes does not bode well for theories of genetic determinism. When we find some race whose lazy students get educational results superior to the results of hard-working students in other races, this would be evidence supporting that hypothesis. But such evidence does not seem to be available.
But we have to admit, I understand Thomas Sowell's point, but we have to admit that there are some certain areas in the world they have a lower cognitive or intelligence when it comes down to IQ. We have to admit that this is a reality. I'm not saying that's a disadvantage, but it's a reality. I personally believe it, even though that's a lower uh, IQ intelligence measurement. I mean, that means that you have a possibility to just go from that point all the way to the top with a lot of momentum. Where it's a great opportunity, but that means that you have to spend a lot of time, reading. Go to a lot of museums, listen to a lot of classical music, doing a lot of analysis to develop that brain. From my understanding, and our eyes can see it, right? You look to a lot of these places in Africa, you like there's not even understanding of math. It's just like raw, kind of very raw kind of understanding of civilization. But there's some areas in like Kenya, Nigeria is a great example. Kenya, West Africa. There's some of these places are Uganda. They're coming along, but the question is here in the Western world, where a lot of these kids, even though they have a higher IQ compared to those that are from their continent of origin, still for some reason they just fall behind. I just don't get it. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I would love to hear you guys' opinion. I'll see you in the next one.